Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kid Andersen, and you are listening to Talking Blues with Maku Funasaka.
So, I first interviewed you many, many years ago in Katahdin, I believe.
I seem to remember meeting you, and your hair was black.
Oh yeah, back then.
But was that it? That might have been a Memphis.
That was in Katahdin.
Either Memphis or Katahdin. I mean, that's weird. I can't tell the two apart, but
You have done quite well since I first met you.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's I never had aspirations or plans or hopes to do well, but I guess in some ways I have.
If we go back, so I met you in Katahdin, and I think one of the things was that you were the local boy who had done well. And this is many, many years ago. And by that time, I presume you had already been living in the States.
Yes.
Tell me about
yes.
growing up in Norway and discovering the blues.
I started playing guitar when I was 11. I started playing guitar because my second cousin lived. It was like sort of like my older brother. He lived right down the street, and he at the time there was like there seemed to be like a wave of guitar, people playing guitar. Like all the 15-year-old kids all had a guitar and they all played guitar. It's about 19.
And what did they play? Like what kind of music did they play?
I can't speak for all of them, but my second cousin, who was my initial inspiration for playing guitar and my guitar teacher, oddly enough, because this is in 1989, 90, 91, and he liked the Beatles, he liked Chuck Berry, he liked Elvis, he liked what you even then would call oldies. All this stuff is like, it sounds really bizarre, now that I think about it. I was 10 when I became interested in playing guitar, and I got a guitar on my 11th birthday. And I had already gone through a phase where I liked, I remember I loved Guns N' Roses. I liked like metal bands when I was 8 or 9. Kiss was the first band that got me really into music, interested in music. But I didn't play anything at the time. So I was like 8, 9 years old, and I like Kiss and Guns N' Roses. Not a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, I didn't really have that active a social life on the music scene at age 9, so it was like whatever cassette tape my sister would lend me, basically. But I was I had a real interest in music. The thing of being in a band looked, of course they looked awesome. I mean, who doesn't think that? Ever since they woke me up for my first school day when I was 6 years old, I was going, how long do I got to do this shit for? And they like, well, at least 11, 12 years. Like, oh, mother. I was looking for a way out. And then that was the most, you saw that. Oh, fuck, being in a band. That's the thing. So that's, I wanted to do that, but I was 11 when I first started. For some reason, by the time I was 11 and then started playing guitar, I was over Guns N' Roses. I was over it. It was actually around the time that they started becoming really popular. They came out with like their second album and then everybody my age was listening to, shit that I listened to, and I was like, I didn't want to hear about any of it. I was just listening to fucking Chuck Berry and the Beatles. I loved Elvis, Little Richard, The Shadows. I don't know if you remember The Shadows, a British band with
Oh yeah.
and this is like oldie stuff that my second cousin was, who taught me guitar. That's what he played. First thing he taught me was Day Tripper by the Beatles and Guitar Boogie Shuffle, stuff like that.
Did playing the guitar come easy to you?
I guess so, because I had a couple of stumbling blocks the first couple hours or something, I guess, before I learned how to tune the thing and whatnot. I do remember that, everything seemed to go pretty fast back then. I started on an acoustic, which was the style at the time. You had to kind of work your way up to an electric. Your parents wouldn't just buy an electric guitar, but they'd buy a cheap acoustic, and if you can get somewhere with it, then they might upgrade you to an electric guitar for your next birthday or Christmas. And so I did. After a couple of months, I got my first electric guitar. I started playing January, and in April I was doing my first show in the cafeteria at the school.
Wow!
And it was a complete disaster.
Why?
My guitar wouldn't stay in tune, and so I would just stop the song. The band consisted of only me. It was me and my 1 year younger friend, my neighbor, Daglish. I was 11, he was 10. And I learned how to play drums so that I could teach him to be my drummer. I can't remember who taught me how to play drums. And I'm still not, I'm not an accomplished drummer at all. I just know enough to give very clear and concise orders to a drummer. So it was a disaster. My guitar kept going out of tune, and I would stop the song, and I'd go, "Stop, Daglish! Stop!" And I would tune real loudly. I would look over at my cousin Motz, who was my teacher, and I would be like, "Is it in tune now?" So this happened several times, and it happened. I did that several times in the show, which we only did 3-4 songs at the most. It felt like a pretty big gig at the time. When I went home after that, I just remember being in bed crying. It just, because I was like, I'm terrible. I screwed it all up. I failed, and my dad was like, he was consoling me, I think, but I don't remember him saying, "It wasn't that bad." I have no recollection of him saying, no, it was good. But the thing that is probably the reason I remember is because the next day when I went to school, several of the kids from school who saw it came up to me, and they go, "That's the funniest show we've ever seen. Who came up with that bit?" Yeah, who came? That was the fun. They go, "That was the funniest gag we've ever seen. Who came up with it?" And I was, it was not intended to be comedy, but it worked as such. So I guess that was maybe better than nothing. But somebody saw us at that thing and wanted us to come and open for their band at the local movie theater. And,
wow.
yeah, the first time I really had any kind of, significant, career spurt was actually when I went to Notodden they had the Youth Blues Seminar. I know you probably heard of that.
Yeah.
And I went there. And I think I was 13.
Did you know much about blues at that point?
Yes, for a 13-year-old, because I'd already met Morten Omlid,
okay,
and started taking lessons with him at 12. I was 12 years old when we started, and at that particular time, I had also heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the first person I heard that they said was blues was Robert Cray. There was like a news report from the Notodden Blues Festival, and I believe it was Robert Cray. I've since checked the programs to see which year did I see this, and it doesn't quite add up. But I just remember sitting at my grandma's house, and there was a report on the Norwegian news from the Notodden Blues Festival, and I saw what I think was Robert Cray and Richard Cousins, on stage with a Strat and the P bass, just playing a slow shuffle, going dum 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 dum. I didn't know what blues was. I'd heard about it. I'd heard the name, but I didn't know what it was. And I saw those two guys, and that groove, and I go, "That's blues. That's the coolest shit I've ever heard." And that was the first thing that attracted me to blues.
How much exposure would you have had to live music living in Hare, Norway?
I mean, I've seen human beings perform on instruments. That wasn't on
Okay.
that wasn't on TV.
Okay.
I'd been to concerts with I think I went to a concert one time with a '80s Norwegian rock band, with the big hair and shit. I think they were called Da Vinci. At that time, I hadn't seen anybody. That's why the image of Robert Cray and Richard Cousins playing a slow shuffle, it's just it was burnt in my retina. It might have gotten a little, I may remember some of that shit incorrectly because, like I said, I couldn't find them on the program, but
Right.
But then I also saw Steve Ray. It was mostly, it was TV and radio and records, and then for me it was Morton. Meaning he just passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, on the 24th, I think.
I've been thinking a lot about, not just how great he was, but like how like, and how lucky I was to meet him and at that time and that guy, because I didn't really realize until maybe not even until now just how unique he was. There's not many people who take 12-year-old kids under their wings and send them home with stacks full of T-Bone Walker and Freddie King records. That was and then again, most 12-year-olds probably wouldn't be all that fucking interested in it. So
No, but I mean, he has, over the years, taught a lot of kids and influenced a lot of kids, right?
I think, yeah, I suppose he has. I mean, he's always been involved in the blues seminars. There's all kind of, I think they're starting a blues university. I mean, they were doing a whole bunch of stuff for blues in the schools type of stuff, and I'm sure he's had guitar students. He always had a job, but in the music business, in a sort of in like a like an organizer. He worked with music programs for the government, stuff like that. He's a smart dude, and he's not just like a guy who's just sitting around waiting for somebody to give him a gig. I mean, they're very him and Yostein and that everybody there. They're very creative. They do a lot with. I mean, the blues has done a lot for their town and for them, and they're very creative with bringing it to young people, and I don't it still sounds it still sounds like when they tell me about it still sounds like a job, so I kind of tune it out. But yeah,
but it kind of changed your life.
Oh, it sure as hell did. I mean, I met Morton at it was another like a youth culture camp thing, some kind of you got a fucking pamphlet for it in your school, and it says you can go to this thing this weekend, and they have people teach you how to paint, people do it, and there's a blues guitar teacher. I go, oh, I want to go there, and that was in Notodden, and I went from my little town of Hedde, and my parents drove me there and dropped me off. This is before the actual blues seminar. This is like a little mini thing that I just I guess I we just heard about it, and it sounded like something for me, and they took me there, and I met Morton, and I already could play a bit, and at that time I was, very. I had just discovered Steve Ray Vaughan, and that was totally dominating everything I wanted to do. So I meet this guy, and he's playing a Fender Strat, and he's playing blues, and he told me after the thing was over, he said that if I would like to, he'd love to give me private lessons if I was interested. And my dad was there, and I said, yeah. It was Noton is an hour and a half away from where I grew up. My dad would drive me every other Tuesday. He would drive me an hour and a half to Morton's house, and for an hour and a half we'd sit and play, listen to music, and then my dad would, read the newspaper and drink coffee, I guess, and he'd come pick me up and go an hour and a half back, and we do that every other Tuesday for a couple of years, and everything he said is ingrained in my brain. All the records, that was part of the deal too. He would show me stuff on guitar. We would talk about playing, and he would select a stack of albums for me. And the very first time I went there, yeah, because I remember he asked me a question. I go, so what guitar players do you listen to, like, besides Steve Ray Vaughan? At the time, I literally couldn't think of anyone. Yeah, I said, well, I used to like Kiss, so I guess Ace Frehley. But I was very into that one thing. So he goes, well, here's all the guys that Steve Ray Vaughan used to listen to. I go, oh, really? Because I'd read some of their names in guitar magazines and stuff, and I was the type that I loved Steve Ray Vaughan. That's I guess a lot of people find somebody like that and they just go, well, that's it. I'm gonna I'm gonna be into this guy and what he does from now on. My first instinct was I bought. He had also just died. He died in 1990, and I started playing in 1991. And so there were all these guitar magazines out that were like tribute magazines. And they had multiple interviews with him. And in all the interviews, he would talk about guys like Lightning Hopkins. He would talk about Jimi Hendrix. He would talk about Hubert Sumlin, Albert King, of course. And I would go out of my way to check these guys out, And Morton was a huge help with that because he had their records. And it wasn't easy to find. I mean, you couldn't find that stuff anywhere in Norway. And he helped me. He hit all those records that I borrowed and taped, dubbed on cassette tape from him. Like every one of them was like ingrained in my DNA at this point, and I was just it's just absurdly lucky, I think, at least for being in the blues world, that I got to actually. I'm one of the few people that actually heard Stormy Monday first by T-Bone Walker. And then when I was in high school, all my friends listened to, rock and roll, and we were, they were hippies, and, I would check out like Allman Brothers and shit. I go, that's not their song. Same with Led Zeppelin. When I first heard Led Zeppelin, I go, what the fuck are these guys doing? This is, this is Killing Floor. Why is it called the Lemon Song? That's so, I mean, it's absurd because 99, percent or probably way more of anybody, who ended up being big blues fans, got there through the other way, through, through the bands that were popular in their generation, in their culture, and then they hopefully worked their way back to the blues from there. But shit, I bizarrely enough, I started with it. I was a total stone blues Nazi. I mean, I was blues purist, brought from the age of 12 to, I want to say 14 or 15. As a matter of fact, if like I told you, I would borrow albums from Morton, and I would dub them, on my parents' stereo. I could, I put them on a cassette, and I can listen to the cassette when we're driving somewhere. But if I borrowed something, and there were like tunes on there that weren't 12-bar blues, I'd skip them. They didn't make it onto my tape. So,
okay, so you obviously benefited from the school programs that Katahdin Blues Festival sponsored or supported. What did that actual festival do for you in exposing you to some amazing blues?
oh, that's well, for one thing, I kind of grew up with the Knowlton Blues Festival. It's like this. I mean, if you play it there, you're like you're big time. Mm-hmm. So there was that. Everybody could tell that this wasn't just some shit that was popular in locally. That this event was like a world class recognized blues festival, and I went to the blues seminar that they do too. That's not. I met Morton at this other thing. It was like a short seminar. I mean, I went to the blues seminar where they, I was 13, and for a week they send you to like a camp with other kids your age or up to like maybe 18, and you got to form bands and you got to learn blues songs and play, and then the big finale is that you do a performance at the Knowlton Blues Festival. It's not a paid gig in the vein that I've become accustomed to now. As a matter of fact, you pay to be on the seminar, but it was totally worth it. Because at 13 years old, I'd absorbed a lot of stuff. I'm not really. I could play a little bit, and I mean, I was above average, skilled, I would think, and. So when I played on that blues seminar, there was this guy, Jon Jarle Haugen, who you might have met, and he was he didn't say anything. He was all undercover, but he went to see the blues seminar performance, with all the youth blues bands that have formed at the blues seminar, and he was a talent scout for a new TV show. That was not just a talent show, but it was a talent show where you competed against kids from all over the world, and he discovered me. so he asked me or my parents if there's this new TV show. The host of the TV show, Don Børge, very famous. It was like Jay Leno. He's like that for Norway. He's that famous, and we were completely starstruck, and I went and I played Hideaway by Freddie King. Morton was coaching me, and I was the first Norwegian to advance. Wow. in this talent show. That was in round two. I won with Hideaway. I played the guitar behind my head. They loved me. In round two, they had a fucking 10-year-old boy soprano from Germany. With big head of blonde hair, looked like a mushroom, and there was no beating him, because he was he was like like a fucking prodigy, like a world-class talented dude, and because they had an audience, you could win either by wooing the audience or the jury, the judges, the experts. This guy won both.
Okay, what did that experience do to you?
Well, that was very interesting, because when I did the first show, the first round, I won. I came home to my small town, Hedde, a town of 1,500 people in Norway, and I was in all the newspapers. There's like 3 local newspapers in the area, and I was in every one of them when I came back. I mean, it was my first encounter with fame. First what do you call it? Brush. My first brush with with fame and success, and they gave me money too.
Not bad.
There was a cash prize just for advancing at it. I mean, I think it was $1,000, maybe, depending on the currency, maybe a little more. But I only made like $5 before that on playing music. so it felt like I blew up after the first show, and I won. I was the first Norwegian to advance, and I didn't. The town I'm from is very small, and they have a very small town, and small town Norwegian mentality is very much. They don't want you to do too good, and this was I was definitely pushing it. Yeah. So I would always get shit about you play guitar, or you're good at something, you must just really need the attention, and they have a real shitty attitude towards somebody excelling and standing out in especially in small towns in Norway. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't like growing up. I didn't like. I felt as you probably can tell, I was had kind of different interests than everybody else, and always a bit of an outsider in many ways, and then but combine that with just all of a sudden now I'm like temporarily as it would turn out really famous. It was very strange but awesome. But the second time when the little German kid beat me, not one paper. They all wrote about me when I was on my way to Oslo for the contest. After I lost, nobody, not one interview, not one picture, and I went back into obscurity. And
how'd that make you feel?
Well, I was pretty sure I had peaked. I go, well, that was it. Seriously, I mean, I was like 14 then, because it was the second time. I was 14, and I was like, "Oh, that's as good as I'm ever gonna do." Shit, I guess I'll have to keep going to school or something.
Yeah. But by this time, are you thinking that you want to be a musician?
I want to be a musician before I even played an instrument. I told you I didn't like getting up early to do that damn school thing. But I found like old essays and shit from when I was, just starting at 11, 10 years old. And they say, they literally say, I want to be a musician, and I'm thinking I should probably move to America. And, yes, and you can play concerts, but you also can get a lot of work in the studio.
Wow.
That's like I wrote that.
So you knew this.
So I haven't changed much.
So you had? Would it be correct to say that you did have a plan to make it to the U.S.? That was the goal.
Well, plan is relative. I had a drive, I guess. But I don't have a plan for today. I don't have any, goals or any of that stuff that people, say that you should have. I mean, at this point, man, it's all gravy from here. That's, I've been so lucky, gotten to do so many of the things that 11 or 12-year-old, 15-year-old me would be incredibly excited about. I don't need any more goals or certainly a plan. My plan has just always been to be prepared and make the best out of whatever comes along, whatever opportunities comes along, and that's that's what I always did after high school. When I had to move out of the house, and I didn't have to, It seemed like the thing to do.
But you moved to Oslo,
Yes, I moved to Oslo.
right? And to join the housebound at Muddy Waters Club.
That's right. That's right. In my history, there, and it's kind of. I mean, there seems like there's kind of like a big lull from like when I was like, let's say from when I met Morton and I got on TV and that shit, to when I moved to Oslo and Muddy Waters. When I moved to Oslo, I went to a music high school, where, because, well, I had to go to a high school. So they said. And, that sounded more inviting than any of the other options. And it was cool. There wasn't anybody there who was into the music I was into. And they assigned me a guitar teacher in Oslo, because it's the school system in Norway is pretty great, man. I mean, you could get whoever you wanted in the country. If they would agree to be your teacher, that the school would pay for it. Yeah. I didn't know anybody. I couldn't think. I didn't know anybody in Norway that. I mean, I was just listening to old black guys in America, and a lot of them dead. So
Right.
they're not going to get a teacher's license in Oslo, I believe. So they, I got this guy, and he was like a Latin jazz. He played, well, he was also like an orchestra, TV orchestra pit player. It means that motherfucker could play anything. And he was a monster player, unbelievably good on guitar. I thought, and I kind of just went, well, shit, if there's guys like this, running around in Oslo, in Norway, if there's guys like this running around, I'll never get a gig. I don't stand a chance in hell to be a musician. If there's, guys this skilled, and he's not even famous. So, at that point in my life, which, I don't know, I was 17, I guess, which doesn't sound so dramatic now. But I was thinking, well, I can get a job, maybe in a record store. I did get a job in a CD store selling CDs. I suppose I could have like a job, because I did like that they paid, and maybe like go to jams on the weekend or something to see. That's where my mind was at when I moved to Oslo. But I knew. I didn't go to like, I'm going to make it, I'm going to take this place over and show everybody, I'm basically, my attitude was basically like, well, there's nothing that I really want to do, except do music. And so I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it, even though I didn't have, particularly, I didn't think my prospects were too good.
But by playing music, you mean playing blues?
Well, yeah. Well, I was listening.
Were you open to other things?
Well, like I said, from about 12 to 14 or 15, I was a full-blown, decorated blues policeman. Later on, when I was about 15 or 16, I told you I worked in a record store, and CD stores, as they were at the time. And that was my thing. I would just always go to, record stores, look for blues records, listen to everything, and they would let you listen there. They would always let you listen in the store. So that's where I would check out a lot of my music, because, I couldn't just freely buy any CD and shit I wanted. So there was a couple of like older guys working there that noticed me, and mainly the one guy I'm talking about, he's a musician that I play with to this day. And he was, and they were guys that were musicians, and they loved blues, and they thought it was cool as shit that I was into that, and they started also turning me on to other stuff. I think it started with Little Feat. That was the first band my friend Frederick played for me to try and like ease me into something that wasn't straight blues, and then once I opened up my, I was focusing on blues for the wrong reasons, because I thought, like so many people, it's like, they're more defined by what they don't like than by what they do like. Right. And my later teenage years, I just went on a quest to learn everything I could about every kind of music I could possibly, because at the same time, I'm hanging out with these older dudes who know the whole, they know shit ton about rock and roll, all the whole history of rock and roll. I'm going to a music school where the closest you have to somebody who plays stuff like I do is there's a bunch of guys who play jazz, and I'm learning about jazz shit, and I'm going to school at a music school in Norway. The main curriculum is classical music, which for the first year I detested it. I mean, I hated that I had to learn anything about it, listen to it. It was worse than math. And then, and then also I went into that phase, which I think a lot of musicians do, where you're like insatiable, and you would just, absorb and listen to anything that anybody tells you is good, and that's great. I learned a ton about all kinds of music, so I'm a huge fan of, back then I started listening to country music. I listened to jazz. I mean, anything. There's no genre or anything that I just can't get behind. In one way, all music is the same, and in a bunch of ways, it's different. But
well, what did that do for your playing?
This is that's stuff that took like a long time to develop, and I really think that I haven't started playing anywhere close to the way I should be playing, which is like myself, maybe the last 10 years, maybe something like 15. There's a playing blues for me. I think for a lot of people like me, it's very easy to become like, you got your blues snobs that put a lot of weight on like being a scholar, and telling you that you need to listen to this and this. Like, you need to, if you're going to play that, you need to listen to this. And like taking an academic approach to blues, to playing music, and I adopted parts of that. I mean, I feel like early in my career, like when I made my first album, you really want to prove yourself. You want to put some. Yeah, I wanted to put something on there where I played like Otis Rush. I want to put something on there where I play like B.B. King. I want to put something on there where I play jazzy. I want to show everybody that I can do everything, and then they'll think I'm good. That's a way of thinking you can be stuck in for a really long time. I think gradually, I've had a few realizations that, I have never, ever wanted to say to myself, man, I really feel like hearing I really feel like listening to Sad Hours by Little Walter. But I think tonight I would listen to this very accurate remake instead. That has never happened. So, all the great blues players that that I really like. I think they're guys. They didn't do everything. They did their thing, and you knew what their thing was. And I mean, that's the hardest thing in the world to develop. It's and also have it be good. That's and yeah, I think part of that, part of working on that is being open, just being open to other kinds of music, and I think the real value in that whole experience, because like I went many years where I would absorb any kind of music that I thought I was supposed to like, that I thought was supposed to be good, so I should know it, and I would I was basically non-critical, which is great to be non-critical and open-minded and willing to check out anything, and that's a great way to be. But at some point, in my probably it was probably way later, maybe late 20s, maybe mid 20s, or maybe in my early 30s. At one point, I realized, I don't like everything. That's I don't have to force myself to listen to, I'd say, pre-war blues. As I really dig some of it, but that's a huge universe of blues, and it's and there's a lot of people who would it's just not as immediately exciting to us as the later electric blues, and I don't think a lot of people wouldn't admit that, because you're supposed to like this and you're supposed to like that, and this is like I said, I was always at a war with school from the moment they woke me up when I was 6 years old and told me I had to do that, get up early in the morning to go do something for I was not into that, and I've had a lot of good mentors that have guided me in my thinking, and then ultimately in my playing and in my approach to music. I think that's one reason why people like. I know that's one reason why people like making, having me produce their records. Or they like coming here and making music together, because, the biggest hindrance in to art is to have impose some kind of limitations on yourself. As I can't do that on this record because this is supposed to be a blues record. This the only thing that's truly interesting is can you be uniquely yourself musically,
right?
And I think if you're going to be denying or suppressing whole parts of your musical upbringing and personality, that's not good. If you I've seen lots of people who come from their background is maybe in another kind of music, that they're now in the blues scene, and maybe they want to be in the blues scene, and they'll say they like blues now, but they also really like whatever else they were playing before, and I don't think you should just take a whole side of your personality and pretend like it's not there. There's too much fear, I think, in the way people they ask themselves too many questions. Can I do this? Can I do that? Before they make music, and especially in blues, I think. I mean, not everybody does. D.K. Harold doesn't. He's there's a new generation of guys coming out now that's some of them are like fully formed. They're like they don't have that hesitation or that that thing that makes it so you can hear a guy thinking when you hear him playing.
I wonder, when you went to the States,
Yes.
So he's played in the Muddy Waters Club for a while, backed up a lot of great musicians, a lot of Americans who toured.
This is true.
Terry
Sorry,
Hank.
sorry, I got derailed.
Terry
me on
Hank
track.
being one of them.
Keep me on track. I'm supposed to be somewhere in a couple hours.
But Terry Hank being one of them, and he invited you, obviously saw something in you and invited you to come to the States. Had you gone to the States before that? Like, what? How
Never
much
been there.
did you know about the United States? What was that like?
Well, it was not what I thought it would be like, you know. I mean, eventually it was, but going here, that was my, when I got that gig in Muddy Waters, it was a great, that's another unbelievable stroke of luck that at 18, 19 years old, I left a couple of threads loose out there in my ramblings, but one thing I was going to say, if you recall the guitar teacher I had in high school that was so good that I thought I could never be a musician. Interestingly enough, one day he asked me, he says, "Hey, where are you from?" And I told him where I was from. I'm from a very small town in Norway. It's in the county of Bamble. That's the name of it. And he goes, "Isn't Vidar Busk from there? Do you know Vidar Busk?" And I go, "Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, he is." I didn't know Vidar personally at the time, but I'd seen him on TV. I'd seen him play. I knew he was a good blues guitar player. And my guitar teacher, the orchestra pit Latin jazz guy who can play circles around anybody. And he says to me, he goes, "Oh man, that guy's great." And I go, "What the fuck do you mean?" I go, "He plays like I do." and it kind of baffled me because I have, like many musicians, I have sort of a you can get sort of an inferiority complex, especially when you hang around guys who play more than 3 chords, and it just kind of blew my mind that this guy who's like like an impossibly advanced guitar player thinks Vidar is great, but he plays shit I know, and so even in spite of my doubts about being good enough or to be a musician in Oslo, I did move just for the hell of it. I had nothing else to do, and I worked a series of just shitty random jobs that I kept getting fired for or quit, but just to make enough to be able to live in Oslo, which is the only town you can be a musician in Norway. And eventually I met this guy, R.C. Finnegan. You were talking about Bill Triani. Mm-hmm. When I met Billy T, I just moved to Oslo. I was 18, and he was obviously an American living in Oslo. He hated it, and man, we just met through this other crazy dude from my hometown who like, he wanted to start a band with me and Bill. Like neither one of us actually wanted to play with this guy, but but I sure as fuck thought Bill was really cool. So I got to know Bill, and then we met this guy R.C. Finnegan, who was another American living in Norway, and he's making his living as a songwriter, because that makes perfect sense, because most Norwegians, their English is just, I mean, it's better than anywhere else in the world. That's not an English-speaking country, but they still don't write very good English. And they don't talk it good either. That was his gig, but he also, R.C. Finnegan, he also did, bar gigs. He played on a boat, and his repertoire was just, he did blues, he did soul music, Otis Redding. He played Waylon Jennings and Merle Haggard. Just everything that, soul music, country, blues, some, old time rock and roll. It was just all the shit that I knew, and it dawned on me that, hey, maybe I do have something. That's actually a viable skill, because I know all this music that he's doing. I know it. I mean, I know it inside out. I've been studying it since I was 11, and evidently, all these, monster jazz and fusion and all these other, it appears to me like much more advanced players. They don't know any of that shit, and and not only that, they sound. They're kind of transparently square when they try and play, what they think is an assimilation of it. So at least my Latin jazz guitar teacher, he recognized that, He recognized that in Vidar Busk. And, and I started like, yeah, I probably do have something that people want, I'm as far as for, being a kid in Norway, I'm an expert and an authority on American music, and and what's more, people like it. That was the first gig I had in Oslo, was with R.C. Finnegan, and he's the one that named me Kid. And then after that, me and Bill together had a friend called Rune Pedersen. He was a barely serviceable drummer and a legendary drunk, and he somehow ended up getting a gig booking this club Muddy Waters that had just opened up, and that's how me and Bill got that gig. And yeah, that's what, when I met Terry there, I was trying to get everybody to take me to America with him. That was, I mean, that was my, end game. Where, I mean, I couldn't even tell you why at the time. I can't tell you, well, I can tell you a few reasons why. But, I mean, there's a couple of, like, offers sort of on the table, that I didn't move on because, well, one of them I think was just Homesick James. The club, we backed up Homesick James, and the guy who ran the Muddy Waters Club comes up to me and he's all excited. He goes, "Homesick James wants you to come and play with him in California." And I go, "Really?" I mean, yes, he goes, "He's serious." He goes, "He told me, send that kid to my house. I'll show him how to play guitar." I go, "That's not a gig offer. That's an insult." And a well-deserved one. He's 98. He lives in Fresno. It's not ideal. And I'm pretty sure he was just not offering me a gig in America. He's just telling you that I got some work to do.
But what was it like when you moved to the States? Having this image of wanting to always go there.
Yeah.
You love the music. You get there. What's that like for you? What's the reality like?
If you don't know about reality, you're asking the wrong guy. But it was strange. I mean, because I mean, I don't know what I thought it would be like, and I don't know how it was different. I just remember coming here. Number one, I was hell bent on staying. No matter what. I'm like, I don't, I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna go home with my tail between my legs, whatever. I'm gonna, and to tell you the truth, Vidar Busk told me to stick it out. He said, "We need somebody over there." Right before I left, me and Vidar got to become. He was a he was starting to become a rock star when when I worked in a CD store as a kid. But by the time I left Oslo, we'd become friends, and he told me that because he lived in America for like 4 or 6 years, played with Rock Bottom, and he told me to hang in there. And it wasn't like a hang in there, kid. It was like a very sincere, like deep. I mean, that's what he said. We need somebody over there. That's what he said. And yeah, that kind of, I made up my mind. I had already made up my mind. Sort of. I mean, I didn't think of defeat as an option. But you become it, and it's not exactly the way I think it's going to be. Like there's just a lot of shit to learn how to maneuver. I mean, for a couple of months, when every time I'd go somewhere to eat, they said, they would say, "Sir, would you like the soup or salad?" And I would go, "Sounds good. I'll take it." Yes. I thought they said soup or salad. And I didn't figure it. Just a bunch of little cultural things to figure out.
But was there ever a time where you thought, "Oh, I'm not sure if I can make it"?
No.
Okay. I mean, it's from where I sit.
I don't think so. I'm glad you asked. I don't. I mean, it certainly wasn't always great, but I did not allow for that option. Yeah.
No, but you join Terry's band.
Yeah.
That's the offer. Before you play with him for a few years. Then you join Charlie Musselwhite's band.
Yes.
And then you play with John Nemeth. Like, things are happening quite a bit. And you also play with Alvin Bishop. You're playing with a lot of different people very quickly.
Well, I didn't think it was quick enough at the time, but in retrospect, I didn't think I got my first electric guitar fast enough, and now I think it was like 3 months. So, I felt like, the very start when I lived here, it was. I didn't know anybody my own age. I never met anybody my own age, and. It didn't take me too much later to realize, fuck people my own age. I don't like them. But I was pretty isolated. I was kind of isolated. I just didn't mind that so much. But I would. But the first, playing with Terry was great. I love Terry. We were just working on a new album together. No, he's people. I think people used to saying, it's like family, too much. There's no other way to describe it. I feel, I feel as strongly about Terry Hanks as I do about any blood relative of mine. He's like my father. And I love playing in his band. The Fly and Butch, the guys. We're touring, we're driving around. I'm getting shit-faced drunk at every turn, every chance I can get, and a lot of food, a lot of food, cheap. Once I figured out how to work this, how to maneuver myself in this, in this country, I was pretty. I went for it full force, but the first couple of years, it did feel like that was probably the closest I was to I never thought about moving back, but it's not like we're not famous, it's not like I love Terry, but it's not like nobody's heard of him, he's we certainly, didn't enjoy the same kind of stature that that the fabulous Kim Wilson, the fabulous Thunderbirds, or even little Charlie and Rick Estrin, who was the first.
Was it about that to reach that stature, or just to be gigging?
Oh, hey man, you don't know what it's about when you're that age.
Right.
You're just doing it, and but I had to admit that it was a little, it was I didn't have a bunch of achievements that I could particularly brag about, for quite some time. I felt, that's shallow, but the Grammys exist because, for instance, because it's a measure of success that regular people can wrap their minds around,
Right.
When I started playing with Musselwhite, honestly, it always did mean something to me to have the people I came up with in Norway, and also to have them be I was just impressed with what I was doing. I wanted to be a success story, but I was just following walking the path of my life as it was laid out for me, and
that's a pretty big deal to be playing with Charlie Musselwhite.
Well, when that happened, that was kind of a turning point in that aspect, because now everybody I knew in Oslo, because I did, eventually find a blues scene, musicians, like-minded people, some of them even close to my own age in Oslo. And when I got the gig with Musselwhites, that was very cool, because it's something that made people I used to play with go, oh wow,
for sure.
It's a measure of success, that's easy to understand. That's not why I love playing with Charlie. It's certainly not why I love playing with Charlie now. It doesn't hurt to feel good about where you are in life. And at some of these crossroads and transitional periods, I could sense that there was doubt, and I still cared about what people thought. I wanted my parents to think I was successful in doing something. And I wanted my friends, people I knew from back in the day, I wanted them to think I was successful in doing something. That was part of the motivating factor. Me, I just, I like doing what I'm doing. It seems like I have somehow achieved an existence and opportunities that I wouldn't even have considered them realistic in the least when I was 15. Thinking that I will have my own studio that I'm playing with. I saw Rick Estrin in 1998 in Oslo. He was the first show I saw, first at the Oslo Blues Club. First time I went out in Oslo, I saw Rick Estrin with Little Charlie. And my friend Richard Yems, a harmonica player, we're standing there and we're watching Rick, and I was thinking to myself, man, I would love to find a guy like that to play with. He's just that's exactly what I need. He seems pretty attached to that Charlie dude. So, but if they have somebody else like that, and then my buddy Richard leans over to me and he says, he used to be a pimp. and I went, wow. Which is grossly exaggerated, to say the least, but I got to meet my idols. I got to play with my idols. I got to become actual friends and partners, with a bunch of my idols. That's one thing, and I get to do everything I wanted in life, and I don't know how the fuck I got here, because I just Like I said, I just followed the path of my life as it was laid before me. I'm not. I don't go into fucking self help classes or have a vision board. That's
But the story, and I don't tell me if this is out of line, but the story that I heard about the way you joined Rick Estrin and the Nightcats, I just find that pretty amazing. Is this something you're open to sharing
absolutely.
about? So, what I heard was basically that you had a bit of a drinking issue.
Yes,
you had left the previous band.
I got fired,
and you called Rick. Okay. So you had a bit of a drinking issue.
Yes,
and then they fired you.
Yes, and I knew. It's just I was in a tight spot because I didn't. I wanted to. I had stopped drinking several times because I kept fucking my life up. I get drunk, I get crazy, and it was it's a tough thing to get out of. But in 2000, at the end of 2007, I quit Musclewise Band, and what I was doing was I was going to join John Namath, and we were young at the time, and we've been hanging out in San Francisco. We were kind of like drinking buddies, and we had like a real fucking, we thought, oh man, we're the future. We're gonna take over. It's kind of a. I will say in retrospect that possibly had an inflated, romantically inflated perception of our importance, or something like that. But that's what you're like when you're in your mid-20s. Everything you think of is the most important shit in the world. That's and being drunk all the time, being an active alcoholic like I was, that really makes that much worse. So yeah, I quit Musclewise Band because I thought I'll get together with Namath and we'll conquer the world. And what ended up happening is that I just immediately spiraled so far out of control that he fired me after an ill-fated Pacific Northwestern tour. I literally played with him for 2 weeks. I mean, the two before, it didn't take me but 2 weeks for him to see it. I mean, I love the guy, and I still, he just knew that wasn't going to work, and I knew it wasn't going to work for me either. It had nothing to do with him, but I knew that to keep going the way I've been going, it's just going to get worse. I got to the point where, I would just wake up hungover every day, and my nerves, I'll be afraid of everything, and just my nerves from the hangover every day was I just always woke up with this impending sense of doom that wouldn't go away until I had maybe I'll have a couple of drinks. As the day progresses and it goes away, and you feel all right, and you might even feel good for a little amount of time, but that amount of time shrunk to where I might feel normal for like 20 minutes I'll just go from being horribly anxiety ridden from the hangover, and the next step was I would drink to get away from that, and end up blackout drunk again, and not know what the fuck I did the night before, and wake up and repeat. It's just that little window when I even felt good at all had shrunk so little that I couldn't even tell if there was any time I actually felt all right. So that was the best thing he could have done for me was to fire me. I've never been mad with him for that at all. I was actually kind of grateful, and it was a new low for me. Charlie knew Charlie's he's a recovered alcoholic himself. He knows what to look for. He could tell that we had more in common than just we love the blues.
But you call Rick
Yes.
because you're down. And
I
out
call Rick
and
because
you
I mean
wanted-
it was a new bottom. I'd never gotten fired before. I was gonna say I got into trouble a couple of times with Muscle Whites, but I always skated by, and I'd never been fired. And I got fired, and that was that was a personal new low. But in fact, it was just time. It was just time for me to stop, anyways, because it wasn't it wasn't going anywhere good, and it wasn't fun. And I had gotten to know Rick in Sacramento, and he was somebody I liked, very much as a person. I liked hanging out with him. We were kind of, gotten to be friends. I was married to a woman in Sacramento at the time, so I, got to see Rick a lot because there's not a whole lot to do there besides hang out with Rick Estrin. And yeah, so and he knew. I mean, we'd talked about, I thought I had a drinking problem months before or years before it came up, and we had it because I was always fascinated or attracted, curious about people who had been through what I was going through and made it out the other side and seemed to actually not be miserable and enjoy life. I mean, Rick was a fun guy, man. He looks like he's having fun, and he is. Mm-hmm. And he's, and he's sober. So he was somebody I thought could help me. So yeah, I called him because Namath. Well, that was the clincher. Namath had fired me. I called Rick up and I go, Rick, this kid, hey, listen, man, Namath fired me, and I think it's time, man. I need, I want to stop drinking, and will you help me? Like, I don't know what that means, but I need to do it, and here we go. So we talked for a while, and it was a great talk. If it had, just stopped, if it ended there, it would have still been a great talk. He told me about what he would recommend, and I got the sense that he was gonna be in help if I was serious about stopping drinking, and then he mentions, by the way, little Charlie quit 2 nights ago on New Year's Eve. You want to start a band? He said, he said that. The other thing is, I had put in a phone call in the middle of the night with Namath, when I saw the email, because I got home from another gig, a little bit drunk, and saw I gotten fired. And I told Bob Wells, we were roommates at the time, I was like, oh, shit. He ended up actually taking the gig with Namath. That was funny. And yeah. Yeah, I think I left him a message like, hey, bro, man, I'm so sorry, man. Listen, I fucked up, man, is there any way we can work it out? I kind of left the door open for, maybe he'll let me like beg and crawl my way back into another chance. And he hadn't even returned my phone call. He first called me back after I'd already talked to Rick. I had another gig already, so that was funny because he called me and was like, yes, and I could sort of tell. I mean, I don't know still, but it was my theory that he sounded extra mad, so he could he wanted to rake me through the coals and give me a bunch of shit, and then maybe. But Rick already asked me to start playing with him, and that's who I wanted to play with since I was 18 in Norway and found out he's a pimp anyway. So,
but that I think just speaks volumes for who Rick is.
I
to make that offer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad he was right because I wouldn't have guaranteed that at the time. I mean, I called him because somebody else fired me. And he ends up hiring me. I mean, it's I there was afterwards I was offered a way back into all my old gigs after just a week after I stopped drinking. But I said, man, there's no way. This thing with Rick, this means something. I could have gone back to Musselwhite. He hadn't even gotten a new guitar player yet, and he was so kind. I mean, he was still. I'm playing with him still with Musselwhite, and he's just a wonderful person. Him and Henry, and they offered for me to retract my resignation, which is unbelievable. But it's the same thing as with Norway. I can't go back. I mean, I know there was something. There was it was definitely this thing with Rick that I call him to have that conversation, and we end up. That's what ends up happening. I can't. That's. I don't adhere to one particular religious dogma or anything like that, but that's a sign I wasn't about to ignore.
I wonder. I mean, obviously one of the greatest blues bands around, and you're replacing a guitar player who is so iconic.
Well,
how difficult was that to become Rick Estrin and the Nightcats, and you becoming part of that band? Was it easy or was it difficult?
It at that point, I wasn't scared of it. I knew I knew Charlie real well. We always had a relationship that I enjoyed very much. It was kind of like we liked fucking with each other.
And you guys wound up playing with each other too, right?
Oh, many occasions. Yeah, I recorded several albums for him. We done gigs together. Actually, right before he died, we had recorded an album with Kike Gomez where we did like half jazz, half blues. I played upright bass and he played guitar, and he was a guy whose respect was very hard to win, and it took a lot of time. But it was very satisfying, when I could see it working. I felt this kind of bond, like, something familial, just like an uncle. But also that, that's always pushing your buttons. That he was, I have the internet, and I would go on some of the sites, and of course there's always guys that go, there will never be anybody like Charlie. It's like, and that's true. That I knew this. That was the last thing I need to do is to fucking try and be Charlie or any kind of substitute for Charlie.
Right.
That's because is it coming back to all my all the artists I love, all my idols, the true idols, they never had any interest in they all had their own sound, and you could tell it was them when you heard them.
Right.
And they brought their own thing to the table, and that's and I knew that I was going to do that, and I knew me and Charlie had a lot of common ground, but we also there was a lot of differences. But I was I knew I was going to bring some shit that had not been in the Nightcats before, and then if they hate it, fuck them. That's I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna you go be Charlie, motherfucker. That's
but that's really not the case. I mean, you guys are touring all over the world, and you have maintained.
I didn't mean the band. I meant the naysayers, because there's always people.
Yeah, for sure.
And I get that you're a fan of the man. I'm a fan of the man. I was a fan of the band with him in it. I don't even have any interest in leaving anything open for comparison.
Right.
That's.
But it seems
You know,
like everything has gone smoothly. Like the band has maintained, the, its stature, if not grown some. Like you guys have done well.
Yeah, I've been. It's pretty fucking cool, man, because it was very uncertain in the beginning. I mean, I remember when we did this, and those were Rick's exact words. I said he didn't say, you know, you want to join our band. He said, you want to start a band. It is what Rick said to me. And he was always there was Lorenzo and Jay at the time, Jay Hansen, and was it was the Nightcats, and it was the but we kind of started from scratch in some ways, and even there's the thing about when I got in that band that was very different than what I had been doing with Namath or with Charlie, or Terry Hank was he's kind of like family, but I still didn't know his business. I knew he would pay me something for the gig. I didn't know what the gig paid. And that goes for most bands, and that's most situations. That's most artists with a band. That's their situation. They know they'll get a certain amount of money and they can count on, but they're not privy to the whole deal. When we went on our first trip that we that somebody put together with the Nightcats, I got an email that says exactly how much every gig paid. And just that blew my mind, because it really is a band, and it has evolved. Lorenzo has grown into a pivotal role, in the band. He's probably the most important person in the band. With Little Charlie and the Nightcats, Rick was not the band leader. He fronted the band. He sang the songs, and half the people thought he was Charlie, because that's
Right.
That's, when they go to see Little Charlie and the Nightcats, that's the guy who gets up and talks to you, and say, "Here's the song I wrote," and fucking Little Charlie, he didn't even have a microphone for saying hello. But he was the band leader. He was the band leader. He made all the decisions. He shouldered the responsibility, because it's kind of a, I mean, hell, I don't want that job. That's and neither does Rick. He didn't want it. He didn't want it either. That's why he, when he was in the, with Little Charlie was the band leader. He handled all the stuff. Rick, he just liked to chill in the van with the guys and write songs, play gigs, all that good stuff, but not being responsible for a whole bunch of this band. The job that Charlie did and then left to Rick is I mean, nobody wanted that job, but somebody's got to do it for it to be a band, and Rick really stepped up, and we all did, because as it turned out, after eventually, like, we all brought something to the table that was pretty useful and helped the band along. And for each lineup we've had, and we've had 3 different drummers, and maybe now more than ever with Demar, it's like there's no dead weight in that band. There are no there are no duds, and none of them can be replaced.
Right.
It's a great band. It's just, they're great guys. I love hanging out with them, and people keep telling us that all the time. It goes, wow, you guys, like, you look like you're really having fun. You look like you really like each other. Like you're having fun together on stage. And I was like, what is that? Is it really that unusual? It's like, what the hell do these other bands do? But it's really,
it is impressive.
I mean, it's real though. We Rick was saying, we don't have another gig till March. And Rick was like, what am I going to do? I've seen him twice since then. I mean, I had him come to a thing I did in Oakland last night, and then I just did a recording session with Albert Castiglia. And I was like, man, Rick, come and blow some harp. And he did. I mean, it really, man, Rick is just, he's one of the biggest heart of like anybody I've met. I know people, he looks like a diabolical used car salesman or something, and he's he does have if you go way back, he's got a bit of a checkered past, but man, that guy he just has the biggest heart. He's the best, he's one of the kindest, most generous and great people to be around, and that's just all truth. I actually feel like I'm completely failing at doing an adequate job at wording how I feel about him.
I mean, just based on the story you told, I think it speaks volumes about who he is.
I mean, that could have been just stupidity. That's like.
I know you have a recording session to prepare for. I really want to talk to you about Greaseland.
I do too.
Is it okay? Like, I do want to cover your career as the CEO of Greaseland and all the amazing things you've done. I don't think it can be done in the next few minutes.
I know.
Could we schedule something in the future that we could do?
Absolutely.
We'll conclude this episode now, and then hopefully sometime in the near future we can get together and talk about your Greaseland
Let's do it.
Studio.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, man. Thank you.